Welcome to this GIS special assessing the 2016-2017 budget presentation by the Minister of Finance and Planning, the Honorable Audley Shaw. I'm Ian Boyne. We have a distinguished panel to discuss the relevant issues. Many of the issues concern taxation. Certainly those are the issues uppermost on people's minds. And we have with us Aaron Cruikshank, Acting Director, International Trade Relations in the Ministry of Finance, Shauna Trowers, Director in the Taxation Policy Division of the Ministry, and Dr. Audley Eccles, Associate Professor, Taxation, Accounting, and Finance at Northern Caribbean University. We thank you so much for your company. Ladies and gentlemen, good to have you on this panel. We've heard the Minister of Finance announcing tax measures outlining the government's program for this fiscal year. My first question is, what would be your assessment of the advantages of the 1 million threshold, the flat threshold, vis-a-vis what was previously proposed, the 1.5, which a number of persons had said would have created anomalies, an administrative nightmare, and so on. If I could start with you, Dr. Eccles, outside of the Ministry of Finance, how do you feel about what is proposed vis-a-vis what was proposed previously?
Well, I think the proposal now for the $1.1 million is a very good proposal. Honestly,
Why?
I think, well, it is a proposal that is now very simple for everyone to follow.
Simplicity is
The
one of the keys
simplicity
of a
is
good
one of
taxation
it.
policy.
Right, exactly. So, because in the past, what was proposed, you had too many cliffs, and those cliffs created problems for persons who would be in some narrow bands of taxes. But that has removed that and has made the thing very simple, and it is easier for it to be implemented by any. The software programs do not need to be adjusted now. They can be implemented right away. Just change that threshold now from the existing threshold to the 1 million.
So you would cite the simplicity, the easy implementation
of it. Yeah.
as important features of this.
Very good features of it.
Yes. Ms. Trowers, you're from the ministry. Let's talk about the advantages of this threshold, the 1 million threshold, vis-a-vis a multi-layered system.
Okay. Well, I agree and would want to echo the sentiments of Dr. Eccles. Simplicity is important for any good tax system, but also there is an issue of equity and economic efficiency. And the threshold allows for that, in that it is a flat rate across the board. Everyone will benefit. So there's no distortion in terms of who will get an advantage of this threshold. It will be applied across the board, and then the tax rate accordingly above the threshold. So on that basis, I would think that simplicity, equity, economic efficiency.
Ms. Cruikshank.
You have both simplicity, you have equity, but I want to more so speak on vertical equity.
Explain that.
What happened is that with the prior proposal, you would have some persons, those earning between 1.5 and 1.8,
yes,
right, would actually be taking home less pay as opposed to those earning,
1.5.
say, about 1.4 or 1.5.
Yes.
Right, and what that would do is to, it would give an incentive, right, for persons to earn between 1.5 and 1.8. So with this new proposal, with this new design, right, it has removed those distributional kinks, and as such, the vertical equity, right, is now in place.
So, and that's a major issue because that was one of the issues that were hotly
Yes.
debated when the 1.5 was mentioned. In addition to the other issue that you had mentioned, Dr. Eccles, about the implementability of it. So this 1 million threshold, which is not what was being proposed before, which was not a threshold, but really was a tax exemption of 1.5. This now is a threshold
Exactly.
that everybody benefits from. And in fact, previously 118,000 persons would have benefited from the 1.5 tax exemption. Now as many as 251,000 persons. So we have far more persons benefiting under this system than what was previously proposed. You're watching a GIS special looking at the presentation just recently concluded by the Minister of Finance and Planning, the Honorable Audley Shaw, presentation of the 2016-2017 budget. We take a break, but we'll be right back.
I am your child.
I am
Your child.
I am your child. I am your child.
I am your child.
I am
Your child.
I am your child.
I am your child.
No child is just your child.
No child is just my child. Every child is Jamaica's future.
Every youth coming like Amayu.
We must do better.
I am your child.
Well, I hope you've been finding the discussion as informative as I have. We hand over to Ian Boyne to hear more.
Welcome back. You're watching a special GIS presentation looking at the 2016-2017 budget presentation, which was just recently delivered. The opening of the budget debate just recently delivered by the Minister of Finance and Planning, the Honorable Audley Shaw. We have with us as a guest on the panel Ian Cruikshank, Acting Director, International Trade Relations in the Ministry of Finance, Shauna Trowers, Director in the Taxation Policy Division of the Ministry, and Dr. Audley Eccles, Associate Professor, Taxation, Accounting and Finance at Northern Caribbean University. I'm Ian Boyne. Let's go now to the area of the funding of this 1 million threshold facility of the government. This would cost about what, 12.5 billion, $12.5 billion dollars for the government to give up this revenue. Well, starting with you, Dr. Eccles, what are your thoughts on the means of funding this? Because the public is always concerned that the least onerous measures are applied to bridge financing gaps in the budget. How well do you think the government has done in terms of funding this concession?
Well, I'm extremely happy with the proposal that I've seen here, and I must give
Credit to these
credits to these technical persons, because when you look at it, we have roughly $6.5 billion that is coming from SCT, which is the tax on
the fuel.
Right? And as I've explained before, I do not believe that that is going to have a significant
inflationary effect.
And then there is $5.3 billion from departure tax, which in many cases, a lot of the persons who are going to pay this departure tax are non-Jamaicans.
Yes.
Right? So, which means that we are sheltered again.
And that's not going to destroy the tourist industry.
No, I don't believe so.
Yes.
Right? And the other part, and I was very also happy to see that there is a $1.4 billion and that is coming from the introduction of SCT on liquefied natural gas and heavy fuel oil. Right. So in fact, the government has raised a little more than enough to pay for the tax, which was one of the concerns that a lot of persons had. And I'm very, very happy to see that that was achieved in this particular case.
Now, the minister announced that next year, April 2017, the 1.5 million tax threshold will kick in. That is different from the 1.5 tax exemption to be a threshold. Aaron, perhaps you could explain why, if we have raised problems with the implementation of the 1.5 this year, why those problems would not also be a factor next year when there's a 1.5 threshold.
In the initial proposal, it was really an exemption.
Not a threshold.
Not a threshold movement.
Significant difference.
And there's a difference between the two.
That's right.
Right, and the exemption was only going to be for a particular set of income earners. Now, with the threshold movement, everybody is actually going to benefit, which means you won't necessarily have what you would call those distributional kinks anymore. Right, now once you have removed those distributional kinks, right, then you won't have that issue of persons having less incentive to work hard. Right. Absolutely. So we have taken care of those issues. Absolutely. Right, by moving the threshold. Okay. Right.
So that's a big difference.
Yes.
Between a threshold which benefits everyone
right.
on PAYE and a tax exemption limited to a particular group.
Well,
targeted
I would
to
also want to further expand. In the initial design, focused on the PAYE individuals. So those would be persons who were employed, and their employers would have taken out the PAYE and remitted it. This redesign speaks to both the PAYE and the self-employed.
That's another
So that's
significant
another
point.
significant difference. It's across the board for
So
all
this
individuals.
is for so the self-employed would benefit from this.
Right.
Correct.
It's a PIT system.
It's a PIT threshold
So more persons will benefit, and more categories
of
persons would benefit, including the pensioners whom you had mentioned before. And also Jamaica now returns to a progressive taxation system, which I strongly support. And we join now about 75% of the countries of the world which have a progressive taxation, which brings about greater equity. It means that people who earn more should pay more. So persons at 6 million and above will now pay 30% rather than 25%.
Right.
But explain how that's computed.
The design of it is important to understand. Some school of thought would say that in applying a 30%, right, for those earning over 6 million, you would actually find a difference between your gross income, right, and the threshold, and apply that 30%. But that is not the case now, right? The new design is as such that between the 6 million and the threshold.
Not between, you mean
yes, between
threshold and 6 million.
Well, between the threshold and 6 million.
Between threshold and the 6
million,
yeah.
you would apply 25%. Incomes thereafter that 6 million, right, would now attract that 30%.
Also, it won't be as onerous.
Exactly.
Because if it were, you would risk migration. People saying, people like you moving up and so on and saying, but what incentive?
Yes.
Or you probably would risk someone keeping at 6 million.
That's right.
In real terms.
Exactly.
Of course, I say you don't want to move above that.
So in effect,
so design is such.
It's important
that you really start paying the 30 when you reach the 6.
Thereafter.
After you've reached.
So essentially, somebody earning, let's say, $9 million, right? They'll be faced with two tax rates. Between the threshold and 6 million, you pay at 25%. Right? However, thereafter the 6 million to the 9, right? You pay 30.
I'm sure that's a relief to many persons who are at 6. Thank you very much. We thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us for this GIS special discussing the opening of the 2016-2017 budget debate, and with us discussing the budget, particularly the taxation elements of it, have been Aaron Cruikshank, Acting Director, International Trade Relations in the Ministry of Finance, Shauna Trowers, Director in the Taxation Policy Division of that ministry, and Dr. Audley Eccles, Associate Professor, Taxation, Accounting and Finance at Northern Caribbean University. I'm Ian Boyne, wishing you a good evening.